Hello all. As you can see, it's a nice and sunny day in the city of London. Perfect to be riding some trains. Today, I'll be doing a video on what I've been wanting to do for a long time, in that I'm at Liverpool Street Station to ride one of Greater Anglia's Class 720 Aventra units. However, first, we will be looking at one of their Class 321s, which the Class 720 will be succeeding on the Great Eastern Main Line. So how do they compare? Let's go and find out, shall we? Liverpool Street Station has to be one of my favourite London termini, combining both a modern and historic look to its architecture and design. Originally built in 1874 to house the former Great Eastern Railway as a replacement of Bishopsgate Station, the station today serves as the termini for both the West Anglia and Great Eastern Main Lines, serving destinations such as Hertfordshire, Essex and Norfolk. Greater Anglia is the principal operator of the station. However, suburban services are also provided by London Overground and TfL Rail. Liverpool Street Station itself is rather big, making it difficult to navigate at times. However, the departure boards are split between West Anglia mainline services, labelled West, as well as Great Eastern mainline services, labelled East. This way, you can easily navigate where to find your train, as well as not get lost in the complexity of the station. In terms of who we're travelling with today, we're travelling with Greater Anglia, between London and Colchester. First up, we'll be looking at their fleet of old Class 321 trains, which are due to be phased out by the end of the year, by the Class 720 Aventra units, which will be their successors on both the Great Eastern Main Line, as well as the West Anglia Main Line services, replacing both the Class 379 and Class 317. However, this will be a video for another time, as it is a much more different comparison, as you'll soon see. Our train today is formed of an 8-carriage Class 321 Renatus unit, or -R for short. Originally built in 1990 and 1991 by Brell of York, the Class 321s have been a workhorse of the Great Eastern Main Line for over 30 years. The Class 321s also previously worked West Coast Main Line and East Coast Main Line commuter services. However, these subsequently ceased, with them being both replaced by new stock, having been transferred elsewhere, such as ScotRail, with the bulk ending up with Greater Anglia. Greater Anglia have also received the Northern Rail Class 321 and Class 322 units, which they have used to allow the Class 360s to move to East Midlands Railway. The Class 321-Rs are part of the Renatus project, which began in 2013 with the prototype being built, and ended in 2018 with the last of the production units being built. This involved upgrading the class to more modern day standards, including plug sockets and air conditioning, which hasn't been seen previously on Mark III designed units. This was a franchise commitment by Greater Anglia. Ultimately, they will be replaced though by the 720s at the end of the year. I have moved towards the front of the train, as I will now be in first class. However, I am on a standard class ticket. So, you may be thinking, why is this? Well, Greater Anglia have introduced the Class 720s, which are standard class only. As such, any existing first class on Greater Anglia's non-intercity routes are now declassified and available for public use. We start the walkthrough in the first class cabin, which features a 2+2 configuration with tables. Standard class, however, is 2+3 with no tables. Quite a disappointment in my opinion. We are now walking through the wheelchair accessible area, which also features a PRM specified toilet. As can be seen, interconnecting gangways are operated using manual doors, which, especially given the fact that we're in a pandemic, is not a great feature in my opinion, although these units are over 30 years old. Two plus three seating is featured throughout the rest of the train in standard class, and also features the Faenza ironing board seats. Not really great in my opinion, however, we'll soon see how comfortable they actually are. As we come into the third carriage, we see a standard toilet, with only one being present. On the standard class 321, there are usually two present. However, as the Renatus units and the northern units have a PRM toilet at the end of each train, the other standard toilet was subsequently removed to make room for more seating. We are now coming to the end of our 4-carriage train. And you know what that means. It's now time for me to take my seat so we can hit the Iron Road. So let's go. Off to Colchester now. To the right, we can see the former Bishopsgate station, which Liverpool Street replaced in 1875. However, the structure still exists today, and does make for a rather nice piece of scenery in my opinion. To the left, we can see Bethnal Green Station, which is where West Anglia mainline services to Hertfordshire and Cambridgeshire split from the Great Eastern mainline services towards Essex and Norfolk. On the approach to our first stop of Stratford, we are now passing the Pudding Mill Lane portal, which is what connects the western portion of the Elizabeth line to the eastern portion to Shenfield, so this will eventually connect to Reading and Heathrow once it becomes fully operational later on in the first half of this year. However, this will only be the core, with the full Elizabeth line service expected to start in 2023, meaning that it could still be a while before East London fully realises the benefits of the network. Stratford itself has two main railway stations, the one we're approaching now being the regional station. The regional station is served by London Overground, London Underground services, DLR, TfL Rail, services to Shenfield, as well as Greater Anglia's National Rail services on the West Anglia and Great Eastern main lines. Stratford is a major rail hub used by many people across the country, not just in London, as can be shown from the Office of Rail and Road Statistics, which, for the year ending 2020 and 2021, Stratford Station saw the highest number of entries and exits, with just over 14 million, making it Britain's most used railway station.
This train is for Clacton-on-Sea and Colchester Town. The next stop will be Chelmsford.
Please wear a face covering at our stations and when travelling on trains. Exemptions apply to children under 11 and those with specific medical conditions.
Oyster and contactless payment cards are not valid beyond Shenfield on this service.
Surprisingly for a Faenza ironing board seat, the seats are rather plush and comfortable, although this is to be expected from a first class seat. Plug sockets are also present at each seat. This is in both first and standard class. However, I have found that a lot of the time they don't tend to work on the Renatus units. Fortunately, this was not the case today. Foldable sections can be found on some of the tables, highlighting yet another area these trains aid those with reduced mobility, which is great to see. For the storage of small luggage and bags, luggage racks are available above each seat. Being a peak time service that I'm currently travelling on, we are not subject to the normal stopping patterns that would normally occur on the Great Eastern mainline suburbans, an example being right now, where we're about to pass Shenfield at non-stop. Shenfield is a major interchange, not just for the Great Eastern mainline suburbans, but also for TfL rail services into Liverpool Street and what will eventually be the Elizabeth line all the way to Heathrow and Reading. The Greater Anglia suburbans also split here between the Southend Victoria line and the main Great Eastern main line. As we delve further into the Great Eastern main line, it's worth noting that the speed restriction here is 100 miles an hour, which we are very close to, however not quite there, especially given the poor acceleration that the 321s have to offer. Anyways, let's kick back, relax, and enjoy the sceneries of Essex. We are now approaching our first stop of Chelmsford. Chelmsford is one of the largest cities in Essex and forms a major part of Greater Anglia's commuter belt into London. The station is served not only by the regional suburban services, but also by some intercity services. As this is a relatively new feature for the Class 321, I thought I'd check out the PRM specified toilet, as opposed to the standard one. That, and it's literally right next to my seat. See, there's a bit of a lag with the door closing, but it got there in the end. So, let's lock the door and begin. Initial impressions. The toilet is rather clean, although as you'd expect there are still like a few toilet paper drops and stuff on the floor. But overall, pretty satisfied. The soap dispenser didn't appear to be filled, which was rather disappointing in my opinion. There was also a huge lag in the tap, and although this did end up working eventually, and very well, so was pretty pleased with that. The dryer as well, there was also a lag in terms of it working, but again, it got there in the end, and it did seem to work relatively well. So, overall, I guess from me, that's a thumbs up for the toilet. Well, bit of an average, as I was a bit disappointed with some of the features not working properly. Upon arrival at Kelvedon, I noticed the old First Great Eastern signage being present on the station. There is also Network South East signage as well, which is pretty cool. On departure from Marks Tay, we can see a Class 755 Flirt to the left, operating on the Sudbury branch, which is one of Greater Anglia's new regional trains. I do have a review of one of these coming out soon, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. And we are now about to pass Colchester CSD, which means we are now on the approach to Colchester. So overall, what did I think of the Class 321 Renatus unit? Overall, I have to admit they are a vast improvement from the original Class 321 units. However, I was a bit disappointed that a lot of the features didn't seem to be working, as it is clearly obvious that Greater Anglia have just stopped trying with the trains in terms of general maintenance and general upkeep. Although this is to be expected considering they're about to be replaced by the Class 720. And speaking of which, it's now time to make my comparison as we look at the Class 720 Aventra. So, join me in a few minutes and we'll see how they perform. A few months later, I returned to Liverpool Street to do a long-haul ride on one of Greater Anglia's Class 720s to make an effective comparison with the Class 321. Built by Bombardier at Derby, now Alstom, from 2018 onwards, the Class 720 is intended to be a replacement for all of Greater Anglia's existing suburban fleets on West Anglia and Great Eastern mainline services. A total of 133 sets are on order, all being 5 carriages, having originally been split between 89 5-carriage units and 22 10-carriage units. Well, that's enough introductions of the train. Time to board and have a look around. We start from the front of the train, which has a 2+2 seating configuration. as well as a few sideways aisle seats, as seen on their predecessor, the Electrostar, specifically the Class 377s. You'll have to excuse any wonky movements with the camera here, as you can see that the seating arrangement is 2+3. However, this is abnormally cramped, especially for a commuter train, which is quite disappointing and uncomfortable in my opinion. Approaching the second carriage and the standard toilet, we can see that there is an open gangway present, which, compared to the Class 321, makes it much easier to walk throughout the train and is a great addition to have. Again, you'll have to excuse any wonky camera movements, owing to the cramped nature of the interior. Whilst the Class 321s they're replacing do have a 2+3 seating arrangement, this is noticeably a lot more cramped, owing mainly to the grab handles at the end of each seat, which, I'm going to be honest, was not a good feature to add, and if there were to be upgrades performed to the fleet in the future, they should be raised higher or removed completely from my point of view. One thing I have noticed throughout this walkthrough is that there aren't any side heaters, as previously seen on the Class 321. This is because the Class 720s feature underfloor heating, which are the first trains in the UK to do so. So the fact that Greater Anglia have done this shows that they are rather innovative with this fleet. As we near the end of this very painful walkthrough, we walk through the fourth carriage to come across the wheelchair accessible area, as well as the PRM specified toilet, which I will be having a look at later to see how it holds up. But as you can see, there's a lot of decent wheelchair space for users. And we are coming to the end of the awful 2+3 seating to come to our area, which is the 2+2 area. So, without further ado, it's now time for me to take my seat and do my thing and hit the Iron Road. So let's go. At Stratford, I had to make a quick change onto my actual 720 service, as the one I boarded was bound for Southend Victoria, and the Clacton-on-Sea bound service, which I was meant to get as far as Colchester, was on the other side of the station. As such, I wouldn't have made it in time. For now, we can admire the train's impressive acceleration, which is a vast improvement to that of the Class 321, and is definitely, surprisingly, an improvement to the Class 360, which was Greater Anglia's fastest accelerating train, prior to replacement. What we are now passing is Ilford EMU Depot, which is where Greater Anglia maintains its suburban fleet out of Liverpool Street, operating West Anglia and Great Eastern Suburbans. London Overground and TfL Rail also maintain their Aventras here, used on West Anglia Main Line, Romford to Upminster services, as well as the Shenfield Metro services respectively. Heavy maintenance and refurbishment work is also conducted here, an example being the Aventra Class 221 Super Voyagers, as well as the West Midlands Railway Class 172s. Romford is one of the last stations on the Greater London boundary, having previously been part of the historic county of Essex. Romford, as well as serving TfL rail services, also is home to the Romford to Upminster line, or Romminster line, as can be seen from the London Overground Class 710. Some Greater Anglia services do stop here, although this is mainly in the peak hour. Anyways, I feel like that's enough travel for now. It's time to check out the train's features. It's time for what I like to call Know Your Seat. Whilst at face value the seats look rather hard and uncomfortable, they are surprisingly soft and can be quite plush.
Please mind the gap
Although,
between
that
the
being
train
said,
and the
they are
platform
also
edge.
somewhat hard. Foldable trays can be found at the back of each seat, with grooves not only for storing food trays, but also for water bottles. Probably the most useful feature on this train is that there are plug sockets at just about every seat, which is a vast improvement from the Class 321s. That, and they have more flexibility with USB ports, and they actually work. Just above the seats, an overhead luggage rack is present, which can be used for storing bags as well as other items of small luggage. Pretty handy if you ask me. Alongside the route maps can be seen the iconic red hare as part of Greater Anglia's brand, welcoming passengers back on board one of their new trains. Quite a nice touch. As with the Class 321s, the Class 720s are 100 mph capable, which is useful for the Great Eastern Main Line and matching its speed limit. However, owing to this being a stopping service, we are currently operating at 75. However, this was only a few minutes after leaving Shenfield, so this is pretty impressive acceleration. It is relatively difficult to see, owing to the Class 321 pulling in on the opposite platform, as well as how busy the service now is. But we have now approached Witham, which is our penultimate stop before Colchester. Witham is where you can change for the Braintree branch, however, through services do operate from Liverpool Street. It's now time to check out the accessible toilet, as I did on the Class 321, so this makes it a rather fair comparison. And door locked, let's begin. So, initial impressions, there is a lot of water on the floor, however, this is just spray back I can presume, as it didn't seem to smell, so that's good. The soap has been refilled, so that's good as well. The tap's working perfectly fine. So is the dryer. So yeah, I'm rather pleased with this, as everything seems to be in working order, as well as general maintenance, although this is a new train. So, that's a thumbs up from me. Let's head back to our seats. As can be seen, the passenger information systems on these units are more technologically advanced compared to the Class 321s, showing not only the calling points and the next stations, but also the train capacity, which is rather handy, especially when the seat service is rather busy, as can be seen closer here, you can see where it is much more likely for you to get a seat. However, these do have their flaws, such as stating that the Elizabeth line is open prior to actually opening. Right, we are now approaching Colchester CSD, and with that comes to an end my time with Greater Anglia. So overall, what did I prefer? Overall, I'd have to go with the Class 720 on this one, as although the Class 321 Renatus units are a huge upgrade, I'd say the Class 720s, in terms of both feature and accessibility, are a vast improvement compared to the Class 321s, even the Renatus units, especially as the Renatus units did fall below my expectations. However, the Class 720s do have their drawbacks, such as the interior, but I'd say their advantages far outweigh those of the Class 321s, and even the Class 360s. Anyways, that's it from me, and welcome to Colchester. And welcome back to Colchester, home of Colchester Castle and the University of Essex. The main town centre is around a 20-minute walk from here, so it's time for me to head there. But in the meantime, I really do hope you've enjoyed the video today. So, if you have, please help us out by giving it a like, sharing it, subscribe to the channel and enable notifications, as I am now uploading new videos every 2 Fridays at 5 PM. Well, that's it from me guys, take care, bye.